Remember last summer when the Klamath Basin in southern Oregon was suffering from a major drought?
The grain I'm planting here today, there's not enough water to irrigate it.
It was certainly wet in our area, but did the region there recover at all over the fall and winter? Unfortunately, no. And we know thinking about climate change can be depressing. It turns out there are actually now therapists dedicated specifically to that.
People feel kind of trapped. And so it's helping people to just kind of recognize the emotional reality of that.
Plus, a group of Black Portlanders has a message for the city. Stop the shootings.
I want to celebrate life. I want to celebrate young men graduating. I'm tired of having a celebration of life after somebody passed away.
Here's the story.
I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're going to take you live briefly to the coast. This is Cannon Beach. As the sun's going down, we figured, hey, we're talking about the environment tonight. Let's just soak in this environment for just a moment. That is beautiful, huh? All right, here we go. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of the screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You can use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you can leave us an old-fashioned voicemail. Just call our phone number, 503-226-5090. Now let's get to our big story. Tonight, we're not starting in Portland or even the metro area like we often do. In fact, let's just get out of town. We're going to start in the Klamath Basin, which extends from southern Oregon all the way to northern California. You might remember our stories from last year about the drought in the region. It's okay if you don't. There's a drought in the region. The fight is over water rights now, and with a drought, there's not enough. And the farmers have told us they need the water for irrigation.
The grain I'm planting here today, there's not enough water to irrigate it. I'm using what little moisture we got from a rain and snowfall that happened Sunday, one of the first in, 3 months since we've seen moisture here. We're planting into that, and we're hoping to get some grain up to help hold the soil.
Just awful for the farmers. But the Klamath tribes have senior rights to the region's main water supply. That's Klamath Lake. So that means they get first dibs. The courts have ruled and backed that up. They're using the water to keep endangered fish alive.
That was a central part of our ancestors' diets forever. And as the water's dried up, the marshlands have gone away. The locus is a fraction of what it once was.
So you can see there are some tensions, and the tensions between the groups reached a real boiling point last year when the federal government said farmers could not get any water from the lake because, well, there just wasn't enough. A militia group funded by Ammon Bundy, who took over the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, they threatened to get involved. And some farmers staged a protest near the head gates of the lake. The head gate is the beginning of that big irrigation pipe. They threatened to open it by force and to take the water for themselves. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and that did not end up happening. But that was last year. So what's this year like? Well, things don't look much better, unfortunately. On Monday, Governor Brown issued a drought declaration for Klamath County. It's nearly a month earlier than the one she issued for the region last year. She says she's committed to dedicating state resources to help, although it's not like she can make it rain. But she is telling state departments to work with users and see how they can help. The feds are also working on a plan. They've issued a statement saying the Department of Interior is looking for proposals, which suggests, by the way, they don't have any, that the proposals they're looking for would help restore the ecosystem in the basin and minimize the impacts of drought on farmers, the tribes, and wildlife. So if you happen to have a magic machine that can make it rain, I know where you can get a lot of work. Otherwise, it's hard to imagine how they're going to solve this. But they do have lots of taxpayer money available through the president's infrastructure bill. All right, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino now. Matt, did the Klamath Basin recover at all over the winter? And what does the drought now mean for the summer?
Yeah, there's still hope. We could still get a month of heavy precipitation, even longer across southern Oregon, but they haven't gotten the snowpack that we really wish they would have gotten by this point. Klamath Basin is interesting, too. It's big. It's over 12,000 square miles. That's about 2,000 square miles bigger than the entire state of Massachusetts. So it drains a big area, and it's also interesting because it's been called an upside down river, because normally with a river, the rivers begin up in the mountains and they're small, and then they get bigger, and then they kind of broaden out, and the reservoirs and the ponds and the lakes are lower down. It's the opposite with the Klamath. It begins in the high desert area that Pat was just showing us in the Klamath Basin. and then it narrows as it goes through the canyons in Northern California. So it's a little bit different river. And it was once the third largest salmon producing river on the West Coast, only behind the Columbia and the Fraser River in BC. So it's got quite the history. So this is the area we're talking about here. This is Klamath County. And as you can see, most of it is under exceptional drought still. So there hasn't been that much of a boon with the winter season here. In fact, I was looking at the numbers for Crater Lake, which drains down into the Klamath Basin. They're running about 12 inches below average for their precipitation. The snowpack right now is around 42 inches. It's not as bad as it was in 2015 when it was only 28 inches on March 9th. But the record is back in, I think I got to look at my notes here, 1927. It was 217 inches on this date. So again, way below where it can be. Now, here are the numbers for Klamath Falls itself, the city. And we're talking about the precipitation here. And you can see since the rainy season began on October 1st, it's more than half of average. I mean, but look, it's nearly a 3-inch deficit, and there's only been a little bit less than 4 inches total since October 1st. So to the point of the farmers saying, hey, we just haven't had much moisture. That is true. Now, keep in mind, it is a very arid region. It is high desert. They don't get a lot of rainfall on average, but still, even for them, they're seeing way less than what they would typically see. So to answer the question, Pat, no, this winter has not been what we would have hoped for the Klamath Basin and the drought-parched regions of eastern Oregon.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that.
You bet.
Hey, as we learn more and more about climate change and the effects it's already having on our planet, it can get a little bit overwhelming, right? I mean, not only are we worried about what's happening right now to us in the Northwest, but there are climate effects around the country, even around the world, and things that will be happening in the future. Oh man, you're just one person. What can you possibly do to stop a disaster? Kind of makes me want to curl up under the covers and stay in bed. It can definitely be stressful. So much so that people are now starting to bring it up to their therapists. Our sister station in Seattle just interviewed a psychologist who specializes in helping people cope with the dread and anxiety around climate change. Who knew? We're bringing it to you because they do have practical solutions for each of us.
Well, you've coined the term climate hostages. Tell us what that is.
Well, Mimi, that term came about through my work with people in counseling and therapy and also with students. And it was meant to capture the pressure that people feel kind of trapped between their desires for a better world for themselves and for their community in terms of sustainability and all these things. And also all the barriers they face in terms of changing behaviors, because a lot of the sustainability and, climate mitigation behaviors that people would like to do or are told to do by scientific reports are controlled by governments and people outside of their control. So people feel kind of trapped. And so it's helping people to just kind of recognize the emotional reality of that so they can come to grips with that and then re-engage in a deeper way with some more authentic, getting a sense of their values and how they want to engage.
And it can be stressful to think about all the snow in the mountains is going to go away or the oceans are going to rise. So how do you treat this inside therapy when you talk to people?
Well, the first step is validating people's concerns and then elevating them, really saying this is important. This is as important as any other issue. And then getting creative about it. What do you know? Where do you get your knowledge? For some people, it's really checking in on their media intake and their news diet. A lot of these climate and environmental concerns just affect our nervous system, just like any other concern, like economic concerns or family concerns. So we get a stress reaction in our body, and then our body gets kind of keyed up. So a big part is basic stress reduction, mindfulness, kind of lowering our stress thermometer, as I would say. So it gives us a little more creativity and ability to calm down and be present. So some of it is quite common for any kind of stressor. And then the climate and eco stressors are unique because they kind of cut across all kinds of aspects of our lives. And again, they're kind of mysterious and out of control. And there was a tipping point in the last couple of years, but particularly in the Pacific Northwest, with fires and the heat dome and things like that. So it does really start, it affects how people plan their lives, how they plan their summers. So it's a different scale.
Right.
So it's helping people to manage that larger scale of things.
Well, one thing that you have said that sort of puts my mind at ease a little is that even down the road, our great-great-grandchildren, in the doomsday scenario of climate change, if it is the worst that we're predicting, there still will be good days. That's sort of a calming way to think about it. What is the takeaway for people that may be over anxious about climate change?
Yeah, and I'm careful about that statement of good days because, we know there will be bad days too. There will be an increase in storms and fires and various things. So you or I or someone is in the wrong place at the wrong time, it could be very bad.
Right.
But on top of that, there will be days that will be okay. We'll have ability to make changes. And also our systemic ability to cope with climate impacts is growing day by day. And so I think it's a question of hope in the sense of one's highest vision of the possible. So having a vision of the possible that includes these problems, but also how we're going to adapt, how we're going to overcome, how we're going to contribute to some solutions. And so that's the direction to go.
So hopefully you got some good tips out of that. Now to another crisis, the crisis of gun violence in our area. Today, a group of black men under the umbrella of the No Hate Zone gathered at Dawson Park in Northeast Portland to share their anger, frustration, and at times their fear over gun violence.
At Dawson Park near Emmanuel Hospital, a traditional gathering place for many from Portland's black community, a memorial speaks of the violence that's once again shattered the calm here. 55-year-old Mark Johnson was shot and killed here Tuesday, March 1st. Another man was shot and killed in the park March 9th of 2021, and a woman was killed in December of 2020 here, caught in the crossfire between two groups shooting at each other. On top of that, Portland's gun violence shows no sign of slowing down.
I'd like you to stand up here in solidarity.
All of which brought roughly 20 men to Dawson Park to say enough. Lionel Irving is founder of a group called Love is Stronger. It works to reduce the number of gang members and inmates through unconditional love.
But us as a community, we have to stand up and say that we had enough. So I'm frustrated with my neighbor because he's not reaching out and speaking to the kids on the streets. He's just right past shaking his head. I'm frustrated with my homeboy because he's not speaking life into my little homie. And so I'm gonna give y'all just a piece of my mind. I'm frustrated by the inaction from not just the city, but from as the community as a whole.
Herman Green, a North Portland pastor and member of the Portland School Board, said volunteers on the front lines dealing with shooters should be paid.
You don't know what it's like to struggle and to scratch and to crawl and to feel like nobody else cares, and that the only way that you're going to get up is that you take from somebody else. And so you don't understand. But somebody who has lived that life and has come out of that life, somebody who used to be there and is now is not, they can tell them what they need to do and they'll listen. What we need to do is pay them. We need to pay them.
John Kanda also spoke. He has spent years in Portland fighting against gang violence. He said a culture at City Hall excludes community members instead of embracing them. He remembered to a time back 11 years ago when gang violence roared to life in places like Holiday Park near Lloyd Center and turned dangerous. We covered the issue several times, including when Kanda and his group called Connected mobilized volunteer patrols in the park. In 90 days, crime here dropped 25%. But even back then, he worried about the future because funding for programs was always up and down.
For now, things look comfortable. But if we continue this trend with defunding and disinvesting in our youth's future, the backlash we'll see. And the way we'll see it is we'll grow more prisons, they'll get larger, populations will be harder to manage, and in the long run, it'll cost us more money.
Now, Kanda says city leaders have lost sight of community-based solutions like that, and he urged all council members to resign.
I'd walk into my office, I would set my keys on the counter, give back my key cards, and tender my resignation. Because in my eyes, you are no longer fit to serve this city. Thank you.
I could really feel a lot of frustration out there. Organizers of today's event want three things. They want Portland's mayor to declare an emergency around gun violence and then do everything the city can to stop it immediately. They also want a statewide task force to coordinate and focus intervention efforts. And they want $10 million to fund community-based programs that try to stop gun violence upstream before it ever happens. Now to an update on a story we brought you last week, the do-it-yourself skate park in Portland's Lentz neighborhood. It's a project that started when the pandemic shut down everything. Some of the neighbors who were out of work decided to band together and build the skate park. It's just off the Springwater Trail at Southeast 100th and Duke. And while it appears sturdy and well built, it's not officially sanctioned by the city. Now, I don't know for sure if the Parks Department watches this show, but I think they should, and we welcome them if they are right now. Or perhaps it was coincidence that we broadcast our story on the park Friday and then members of the Park Department showed up Monday. Whatever. Anxiety shot through the roof for people like Alex Jango, one of the builders here. He quickly moved into action.
We had some neighbors that are in support of the skate park build come and talk to them, and we had some of the youth who just got out of school to come down here and skateboard and talk to them and tell them the merit and the positive aspects of this project.
The park's employees would not talk to our photographer who took this video, but Alex said they were nice and simply there to see the skate park for themselves and then report back to their bosses. Alex is hoping for good news.
Ideally, we'd like to have them work with us and recognize it and someday get umbrellaed into a liability insurance plan and be able to keep it for the community.
That'd be cool. I asked the Parks Department whether the city is working to approve the park or maybe moving towards tearing it down. The spokesman said the city has no plans nor decisions at this time, which I think is good news for the skate park, at least for now.
A man from Ukraine living in Vancouver is on his way back home to join the war. What's it like for his loved ones left behind?
How is everyone feeling having said goodbye?
My daughters cried. Yes, of course.
When the story continues.
Welcome back, and keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We're a different kind of show. We really do want to hear from you. Maybe you have thoughts about sunsets or climate change. Send it in. Or you could give us a call, leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Hey, last night on the show, we told you about a Vancouver man from Ukraine who's headed back to home to fight for his home country. His story was featured in The Guardian. Well, tonight we're checking in on the family that he left behind in Vancouver. That can't be easy for them. Galen Etlin reports.
Sergei Koronev spent his final moments in the U.S. watching his daughter practice skateboarding. Journalist Sergio Olmos captured the moments before this Vancouver father flew off to join the Ukrainian army in the fight against Russia.
Ukrainians are very brave people. It's true.
Valentina Korneva and Sergei are divorced, but still close, sharing daughters and a bond.
Really good man.
This video shows Sergei packing alongside family ahead of his flight last Thursday. He is one of about 66,000 Ukrainians returning home to fight.
Why was it important for him to go to war in Ukraine?
He knows people who stay in Ukraine. His mother stay in Kiev, and many friends stay in Kiev who need our help.
Sergei hopes to get those loved ones to safety, but also continue a family legacy. Since 2014, he and Valentina have helped support Ukrainian families of lost soldiers with housing. Valentina is an interior designer.
Build apartments or house for families.
And as Sergei walks through the PDX airport, Ukrainian flag waving from his bag, he is bringing thousands of dollars in U.S. donations to help his home country. At the security gate.
How is everyone feeling having said goodbye?
My daughters cried. Yes, of course.
Tears for their father as he gives them a long hug. A kiss and salute from family, watching a loved one get on a plane toward an uncertain future. But knowing this.
We won't save Ukraine.
Galen Etlin, KGW News.
Fingers crossed for him. Still ahead, we've spent a lot of time talking about the Oregon governor's race, but local elections are just as, if not more important. Do you know who will be on the Portland City Council ballot in May? There are a lot of names. We'll talk about the crowded field coming up next. Welcome back. The filing deadline to run for the 2 Portland City Council seats that are up for grabs in this year's election was yesterday. That means we now have the entire list of candidates who will appear on the ballot in the primary election in May. Turns out a whole bunch of people are interested in this job. They include incumbent Commissioner Joanne Hardesty and Dan Ryan. A total of 20 candidates have thrown their hats into the ring, 9 for Ryan's seat at position number 2, 11 for Hardesty's at position number 3. That's the biggest slate of Portland City Council candidates since 1970. if you don't count special election races like the one in 2020 to replace former Commissioner Nick Fish, who died partway through his term. All 18 of this year's challengers will appear on the ballot, but not all of them appear to have the resources to pose a serious threat to Ryan or Hardesty. Most of them, for example, have not set up campaign committees. That is a step that you're only allowed to skip if you expect to spend less than $750 per year on your campaign, which I guess is possible, but not likely if you're going to win. Some of them also don't appear to have campaign websites. Ryan's foremost challenger appears to be nonprofit leader and political consultant A.J. McCreary, whose campaign currently has a cash balance of about $41,000, according to records from the Oregon Secretary of State's office. Hardesty's two most prominent challengers are administrative law judge Vadim Mariski, who has built up a campaign cash reserve of about $130,000, and also attorney and business owner Renee Gonzalez, who is up to about $174,000. As for the incumbents, well, Hardesty's campaign currently shows a balance of about $211,000, and Ryan shows a balance of about $171,000. And yes, I know, money doesn't equal votes, but you get an idea of the strength of the campaign there. The primary is May 17th. In each race, a candidate can win the seat if they get more than 50% of the vote in the primary. If none of them get there, the top two will advance to a runoff in the general election on November 8th. And while we're talking about all this, we should also mention that Portland's government could look a lot different soon. We told you last week how the Charter Commission is planning to recommend changes which you will get to vote on if you're a Portland area voter. This is how things run now. The city has 4 elected commissioners who can live anywhere they want in town. They do not represent any particular area. Same thing with the mayor. Once elected, the mayor then assigns each commissioner huge city departments with budgets in the millions or tens of millions of dollars and hundreds or even thousands of employees. Then those commissioners are expected to run the department, overseeing a department director. But since the mayor can give anyone a bureau, he can also take it away without notice, and that creates instability. And instability can create silos and an unwillingness of people in departments to cooperate with other departments because, after all, you got to look out for yourself. So, what could a new system look like? The Charter Commission says it has agreed on a few general ideas. First, they suggest getting rid of the commission style of government. Instead, Portland would have city councilors who would not manage the bureaus. City councilors would also represent districts, not the entire city. Also, the winner of a city council seat would be decided in just one election. So the top vote getter wins. That's a lot easier to write than to say. The Charter Commission has not put together its final proposals yet, and you still have time to weigh in. They're taking public comment at their meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. You can find the Zoom link on the City of Portland's website. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We'll finish the show with a way that you can help your community right after this. Hey, we'd like your feedback on the approaching end of the pandemic mask rules. I know many of you have already shared with us that you're going to continue wearing your mask for safety even after the rules end at midnight this coming Friday. But for the rest of you, Southwest Washington, Oregon, around the globe, what are you going to most enjoy doing without a mask? Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing and reading your replies, and we'll air some of those during the show on Friday. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to the KGW Great Food Drive. Our goal is to provide 1.2 million meals to local families. You can help by dropping off physical donations at any local Toyota dealer. All this week, local Toyota dealers will match the first $10,000 donated. To see all the ways that you can give, or if you need assistance, visit kgw.com/food drive. We want to thank our partners, Pacific Office Automation, Toyota, Rivermark Community Credit Union, and Safeway for supporting this year's food drive. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Remember, the story, our story, that never ends. See you tomorrow.